Hello Africa, tell me how you're doing. Was a sentence that was more or less sung by one Eurodance music person back in the 90s. Why it's worth mentioning, what we have under review here is Brutal Africa, the heavy metal of Cowboys of Botswana. So this is an African metal compilation. Now I bet 99% of you lot here cannot name a single African band, at least before googling that shit up and all that stuff. To be honest, even I couldn't name more than one band, Skinflint, from Africa, even though being true like thousands of reviews throughout the years, being metal otherwise. And still Africa seems to be like this kind of place which just is fog covered when it comes to bands. However, this compilation is kind of to prove otherwise. There are bands worth looking into, bands that are more or less interesting, or at least they do exist even though we might feel otherwise. Well, after this introduction, let's go to the album in question. And as you can see, very atypical cover for a metal album. A kind of a tribal person, and then we have kind of a cowboy look with chains and well, cowboy hat. And on the backside of this CD, released by Finnish Sword Records, by the way, known for weird cult acts and compilations as well. As you can see, there are 11 tracks and a few bands. All of them except one have 2 tracks here, which are just laid there in a peculiar order. Now inside there is a little bit more information, not much to show here by the way. So this is a compilation that is focused on Botswana scene. It might be something else that is you're accustomed to. As you can see, all the bands are more or less kind of described here. They are presented here with texts and images and lineup. So this is also very informative compilation in the sense that it actually explains the stories here and shows you the covers and whatever, which is not always a given thing with compilations. So if you need to, you can just pretty much pause and read the stories here and then just start googling or whatever these bands. But no lyrics whatsoever are here included, which kind of makes sense. Now, as this is a compilation, it's also quite given that none of these bands sound exactly the same. Not only that, this is not even a genre compilation as such, outside metal that is, because some of the bands are more or less heavy metal, some of them are more like death metallic, but they are not one and the same genre. And that is one of the problems here. The other problem is that none of these bands are exactly very good, big, or otherwise too much succeeding in their metal music. Now, most of them are not bad either, because it seems like these bands are very much still in the demo phase. That is, whether we talk about production, songwriting, vocal range and all that stuff, it seems like most of these bands have more or less the talent and skill to do the music, but they are not there. Might be a budget thing, might be a studio thing, I don't know, I haven't confirmed it, but what I read from someplace on over the net, that there's only like one real studio for drums in Botswana, which is kind of like a hard thing for us to understand in the Western world. I mean, in the America only we have probably hundreds or thousands studios where you can just pretty much get a decent recording quality. And of course the same applies to places in most of Europe, I guess. Even in Finland there are lots of places where you can just record a good metal album, garage, studio or otherwise. But Africa is a different thing for so many reasons which we are not getting into. The point here is there are certain limits which Botswana no doubt presents, and That's why we have to kind of understand this is not your typical compilation of bands to emerge or whatever. Now, I don't like naming and shaming, but I guess in the terms of so-called journalism, I really have to do something. Like I said, most of these bands are pretty reasonable. Crack Dust and I guess Overtrust and Stain being the better ones on this one. But there's one really ridiculous track which I don't think should be here, and it's the one by PMMA, because it just features so horrible singing that you don't feel that kind of awkwardness while listening to people singing, except if you're watching like episode of Idols of Talent, that is those very pre qualification things or whatever. It's just horrible and makes you wonder why. Now, most of these other tracks here are more or less quite okay, but not exactly really good. I mean, not that good that I would like go praising them, buying their CDs and whatever. But I find this compilation so much more than just a compilation of tracks, because this actually is a kind of eye opener in the terms of showing us some African bands which you probably haven't even heard of. They're kind of like proving that there are people from Africa creating heavy metal music, even death metal. They are not black metal, they're not really thrash metal, but they're more like kind of hybrid, figuring out what they should be, what they're gonna be later on when they have the time, budget, and whatever things needed to evolve and progress. And this being said, it's kind of a tricky to kind of a review this kind of compilation, because on the other hand, it's kind of like a cultural thing, like a eye-opening favor even to have this kind of compilation released. But would I actually put it in my shelf to kind of enjoy it and embrace it later on? No, definitely not, because the overall thing, the quality here is kind of a mediocre-ish. And as such, it's kind of a tough thing to say, because I mean, I would personally like to hear more of these bands later on when they have rehearsed more written more songs, did some more, I don't know, better quality, more rehearsal, more gigs maybe. But at this stage, it's much like listening to a demo compilation where you have these potential gems to emerge. So once again, an interesting release, an interesting compilation for sure. But is it really good? Is it really enjoyable to listen to multiple times? Not quite. So with this information, once again, do what you need to. I bet you can pretty much Google some of these bands. I will just have the link for the compilation right there, and from that you need to go on to find those snippets or full songs. So there you have it, Brutal Africa, Cowboys of Botswana. There you have it. Some eye-opening, ear-opening music for us all. Take care and see you with more Rauta reviews coming your way.